you see one in the sky, if you see one manifest before your very eyes, if you see a strange creature lurking outside, then tell it on accounts of the paranormal. Hear it on accounts of the paranormal. Welcome to accounts of the paranormal.
Welcome to the show. Tonight, I welcome Bonnie from Pennsylvania, who shares a terrifying account her family endured decades ago when moving into an old farmhouse. From the mischievous spirit of a woman who died in the home to a much more malevolent, darker entity that still haunts her to this day. Bonnie, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Happy to have you here. I was excited when I received your email. You and your family endured something that pretty wild that went back to when you were about 6 years old in this old farmhouse that you guys had moved into, and found out, it looks like pretty quickly, that there was something going on there, some spirits in this home. So start at the beginning, because from what you can remember, I know this was a long time ago and you were young, but as traumatic as it sounded like it was, I'm sure you have some stories to tell from that. So what happened when you guys moved in there?
Well, the first strange thing that happened when we moved in is that very early on, maybe in the first weeks, my mother and I had the same dream on the same night. And it was about this lady whose name was Martha, and she had we had a big brass key ring with all the doors in the house had skeleton keys. So in our dream, that Martha had that key ring with our skeleton keys, and she was running through the house laughing hysterically. I have the keys, I have the keys. And it was just disturbing that, So we were doing a meet and greet with one of the neighbors sometime after those dreams, and my mother was telling this lady about this dream and how strange it was that her and I had both dreamed it at the same night. And the lady said, "Oh my goodness, that lady Martha is your landlord's sister." And she was deemed to be insane, and the family would lock her up at night, but she would get the keys and run through the house laughing hysterically. "You can't lock me up because I have the keys." And in a run one night, she fell down the cellar stairs and broke her neck, and she died there. So, it sounds like a pretty convenient ghost story, and we didn't think too much of it. Um, but, we dreamed about her, occasionally. But Martha was very mischievous, and our brass keyring would disappear along with some of our brass trinkets that our mother had. They would just disappear, and later on, a month, 2 months, a week, they would reappear. And so we were pretty convinced that Martha was real and she was just mischievous and she was there and we were just going to have to deal with her. And then not too long after that, we were made aware of another entity in the house that seemed to be quite evil. And we couldn't put a name to it, but it was very apparent that this thing wanted to hurt us. And so us kids called it It with a capital I, capital T, long before Stephen King had an It. And so that's kind of where the story begins. And then it went through 6 years of absolute terror until we had to move out.
Okay, back to the dream and moving in that first week. Okay, so you're 6 years old. You had this dream. How did it come about that you guys recognized, you and your mother, that you shared the same dream that night? Like, did you wake up and say, "Mommy, I had a very scary dream about a woman running through the house"? Did you hear your mom talking about the dream? Where did you guys connect where you said, "Okay, wow, we dreamt the same thing last night"? How did that come about?
I don't directly remember, but I've always been prone to nightmares, and I might have screamed and she might have woken me up. And then maybe the next morning we talked about it, and I told her this is what I dreamed, and then I just don't directly remember that conversation, but we must have had a conversation about it. And then it was important enough to my mother to mention it to the neighbor lady to say, "Wow, you wouldn't believe that my daughter and I had the same dream on the same night." And so somehow we talked about it, and she was made aware.
How many siblings did you have?
There were four of us, two girls and two boys, and then our mother. So there was five of us in the house. So initially, it was just the dreams about Martha and the things disappearing and stuff. And I really don't remember how much time passed before we were made aware of it. I don't think it was very much time. Um, but I can't say it was 2 months or 3 months. It was just sometime after the dream about Martha that we were made aware of that there's something really terrible in the house. Um, Early on, when our mother realized that there's something terrible in the house, there was a door at the top of our stairs that led to the old part of the house, the old abandoned part of the house. And she took a coat hanger wire and she wired that door shut. So she actually wired the door handle to the stair banister. And so that whatever it was that could possibly come in, she figured it can't open that door. And then we had two bedrooms upstairs, and one was what we called the spooky room, which was connected directly to the landlord's house. And then the other bedroom in the front part of the house where you see the windows, we called that the safe room. So our mother also wired the door closed in the spooky room that led to the landlord's house, thinking that maybe something was getting in the house and tromping around and making us dream, or she just doing whatever she can to protect us. So that was our first indication that something was going wrong in the house.
Did anyone claim to see anything early on?
Well, at first it was just feels. So the boys slept in what we called the spooky room, and they weren't there. Maybe 2 weeks they spent in the spooky room, and it would come into the room. And now I saw it. I don't know if anybody else saw it, but I saw it later on. But it would move into the room, and you could feel it, and it would just through that feel make you aware that you needed to get out or you were going to get hurt. And we did indeed get hurt, a few of us. So whatever it was, it chased the boys out of the spooky room. They moved their beds into the safe room, and for those most of those 6 years, the whole family slept in the same room. um, and as things progressed, we when it was summertime, we would sleep outside. We would just camp out outside because it was safer to sleep outside than it was to sleep in the house.
You said it chased them out. What was it doing? Aside from just a spooky feel, what was actually happening that people were so fearful?
Well, in the spooky room, several different things happened up there. My youngest brother, and I, we had a wild idea that we were going to run away. So we had a rope coiled up and hiding behind the door. And we had some other stuff, back there. And we would play in the spooky room during the day, but we just wouldn't be in there at night. So my brother and I were in the spooky room and we were playing, and the door closed. And the rope that was behind the door kind of uncoiled itself and crawled at us like it was a snake. And we bolted. We left. We just got out. Um, when the boys came to sleep with us in the safe room, my sister said, "Oh, you guys are a bunch of sissies. I'll go sleep in that room." So after maybe the first or second night, real early on, it came in, and it just emitted this sense of terror. And so Anne, her name, she jumped up and she went to turn the light on, and the light wouldn't come on. So she went to open the door, and the door wouldn't open. So she was screaming and pounding on the door, and mom was on the other side of the door trying to push it open. Anne's trying to pull it open. The door won't open. The lights won't come on. And then all of a sudden, the lights came on, the door came open, and whatever the scary thing was, it left. That was a bad room. Another time in that room, I was home. It was during school time, and I was home. I had pink eye. And so my mother and myself were the only ones home. It was during the day, and we felt it was safe to be in the spooky room during the day because it's daylight. So I was upstairs in the spooky room, and there's no beds or anything up there, so it's just this big huge play area now. And I was sitting on the floor, and I had a pair of scissors and some pencils, and I was cutting out little doll shaped things and just playing, and I don't remember it happening, but I remember the after effects. This thing stabbed me in my abdomen several times with a pencil. And I remember having the little brown spots in my stomach where it stabbed me. And so I went hysterical downstairs, and mom wouldn't let me go upstairs anymore. I stayed downstairs until the pink eye was gone and I could go back to school. So those are some terrible things that happened in that room. So we were all moved over into the safe room, and one night I woke up and I saw it walking towards me. And it wasn't very tall, and it had a weird kind of farmer hat or something on its head. And it was old and it was stooped over, but it meant to kill me. I just knew that if it got to the bed, I was going to die. And so I started screaming, and mom was sleeping on the other side of the room in a bed over there. And she jumped up and she ran towards me. Well, she ran through it, and it kind of poofed like smoke. And then she turned around and she ran back through it, turned the light on, and then it just dissipated. It was gone. So that was the most visual that I had with that thing.
Could you see its face? How clear was it, or how physical did it look?
He looked kind of translucent. He had a long coat on, so he was gray. He was all gray, but he had a long coat on, and he was old and stooped over. And I can't remember if I saw his face or not. I just know that he was very, very dangerous.
Did your mom see it in that particular
No.
time? Okay, she did not see it. She just ran right through it.
No.
Didn't know
She
what
just
was
ran
there.
through it and ran. Yeah. And another time in the safe room, my youngest brother and I were up there, and we were getting ready for bed, and we were jumping on the bed and being naughty and all that stuff. And that first window that you can see up there to the right of the porch, that was the room that we were in. And something black came through that window. To me, it was a giant bat, like a baseball bat. But to my brother, it was a giant bat with something riding on it. So that's what we each saw. So we came unglued, yelling and screaming, and he ran to the dresser and he looked in the mirror. And I don't know what he saw in that mirror, but he just came to millions of pieces. I mean, he just went screaming down the stairs with me following him. So I don't know what that was. And that was one of the nights that we spent on the floor, sleeping on the floor in the living room because we were afraid to go upstairs.
So it was something literally shaped like a bat.
Yes. Mhm. It was big. It
I've
was a
never heard
big,
that. How
like,
big? About?
yeah, like 6 feet long, and, big around, like a pumpkin size around. It was really big, whatever this thing was. And it came through. I mean, it just came so fast. It's like whoosh, and it's in the room. And it filled the room. It filled the room with like a dark, foreboding feeling. Just whenever this thing came around, it was just so dangerous. It was just such a dangerous feel. And but I don't know what Tom ever saw in the mirror, and he never told me. He just said, "I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it." And so I was afraid of mirrors for the rest of my life after that. I don't have a mirror in my bedroom. I don't like mirrors.
You said whenever it would come around. Okay, so this one time it showed up appearing like it did, like you just described as a bat. The other times, or when it usually would show up, how would you know when it was there?
Sometimes it was a feeling, and sometimes it would do things. Downstairs in the living room, we had three windows. You can see two of them, and then there's another one around the corner of the house that you can't see. And so we would be, watching a television show in the evening, all of us in the living room, and the window shades would go up one at a time, up, 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 just quickly, just like somebody just, I don't know, and it happened a lot. And it just was, almost like this thing was letting us know that I'm here, don't forget about me. And things that happened downstairs. In the living room, a knife was thrown at my brother, a kitchen knife, and it just came across the room. Ron was home alone, um, and I know it happened because he couldn't get the knife out of the door jamb, and our mother had to climb up on a step stool to pull the knife out of the door jamb, and we had a hole in the door jamb for the rest of the time that we were there. So that's what happened to Ron. To me, there was a toaster in the kitchen, and I came downstairs to get a drink of water or do something in the night. I came downstairs, and that toaster chased me halfway up the stairs, and then it finally gave up and just clattered down onto the stairs. And then I raced upstairs screaming, "Mom, Mom!" And so that's what happened to me.
That's
Let me see what.
absolutely
Oh,
incredible. Hang on a second. A toaster chase. Okay,
yeah,
was it floating up off the ground, flying toward?
yes,
Oh,
hmm,
holy smoke!
yep,
That's insane.
yep. Yep, and the cord, I remember the cord. It was coming at me so fast that the cord was straight out, like it was scary. Um my mother, she was taking college courses, and she would stay downstairs, and study after us kids went to bed. And she said that it would come and fill this room with this scary, scary feeling where, and just to let her know, I've given you enough time now, you have to leave. And mom said she used to try to bargain with it. Just give me another 15 minutes. I got to finish this paper or whatever. And she would bargain with it. And sometimes it would give her time. And then other times it was just like, nope, she had to go. And so that was her story about what it would do. Our mother, she stayed with me, when she was, had cancer until she died. And I tried to talk to her about it and her memories and what she thought about it, these 55, 60 years later. And mom was so terrified that she would not talk about it. Us three, the three women in the family, from all these years, if we talk about it like I'm doing tonight, it will come and visit us, and it will give us, a terrible, terrible nightmare, and it's almost like it wants us to never forget who it is and that it knows who we are. So my brother that had the knife thrown at him, he's very hesitant to speak about it also. So I'm burning incense tonight.
When this was all happening, what were your mother's thoughts or words on it? What did she do to like ease your guys? You just were kids at the time. What did she say about it back then?
I don't really know. Mom was really good at saying, just don't think about it and it'll go away. So I'm pretty sure that's probably how she handled it. We didn't talk about it a lot. I know that at first she would, holler at us kids because the coat hangers would come undone, and we'd find them on the floor that she had wired the doors shut with, and she would scold us kids for it. But she finally came to realize that it wasn't us, it was it that was undoing the wire. And so she kept us close to her when we were, all together. We were always in the same room. We slept in the same room. If we slept outside, we always slept outside together. Mom just stayed close with us, and to protect us, I guess, in the best way she knew how. That, she was a single mother in the 60s. She was kind of stuck there for a while, until we could move out. So there wasn't much she could do.
The landlord. Did your mom ever inquire with him about these happenings? Like if he was aware of it or any prior tenants ever mentioning anything to him? What was the deal with the landlord?
I don't know if she ever spoke with the landlord about it. I know she spoke with the lady up the street, and because they were kind of close. So I think she spoke at length with the lady up the street, which is how we found out that Martha was the landlord's sister, and that she really did take the keys and run through the house. Um, she asked us not to go to Mr. Eshelman, the landlord. She asked us not to go in his house or hang around with him very much. So I think that she was kind of spooked by him. I'm not really sure what her feel was with him.
This dark entity. So you were aware of the other one, Martha. You were sure of
Hmm.
who that was. Did you guys ever
Right.
have an idea or a feeling about what this other more malevolent entity was?
No, I never did. I could never put a name to it. I know that the neighbor lady didn't know anything about that. I don't know. I've often thought, that if I was brave enough to do some meditation and maybe try to reach out to it, but I'm not brave enough. I don't. I'm too scared of it. Um, So I don't know. I don't know what it was. I do know that the house was involved in the Underground Railroad. There was a tunnel in the house from our basement to the barn. And uh, upstairs, the house was built in 1820. So upstairs in the attic, we found a Civil War uniform and a musket and a sword and some other papers and things. Um, uh, and I had heard that a Civil War skirmish happened in the fields and things around our house. So, I mean, it could be an entity from anywhere that just attached itself to the house. It, in the Lancaster County area, that was a big Underground Railroad area. So our house might have been involved in the Underground Railroad. I really don't, I just don't know.
That is so interesting. Yeah, I was going to ask about the history of the home and what you knew about it, and you just answered that. That is very interesting. So from the 1820s, and those objects you found, wow. Whatever happened to those items? Do you recall? Do you know?
They remained in the attic until we moved out. And then when Mr. Eshelman died, the house was sold and the Amish own the house now. So I have no idea. I have no idea. Um, my mother and my sister decided that they were going to go upstairs, and this is after we were all living downstairs, and this thing would only allow us upstairs to use the bathroom and change our clothes, and then it was get out. And you could almost feel it chasing you down the stairs. But anyways, my mother and my sister decided they were going to go upstairs and they were just going to sit down in the safe room and they were going to stay as long as they possibly could and just kind of push back on it and not let it chase them out. They lasted about 10 minutes and then they had to go. So, and the only thing is, I mean, it's such a feeling of terror. When this thing came in the room, it didn't have to throw anything. I mean, it did a lot of throwing things, and I'm going to tell you about the chair also. But I mean, it did a lot of throwing things and moving things around. But if it wanted you to leave, all it had to do was just kind of fill the room with this sense of terror. So, yeah, they lasted about 10 minutes and then they had to leave. So that was the end of that.
Did you ever feel like cold spots? Anything other than the senses? Did you ever have any like scent of candles or anything burning? Do you recall ever picking anything else up?
No, I don't. It was an old farmhouse and it was full of cold spots. So if there was cold spots, we probably didn't think much about it. But I mean, there was always noise in the house. There was a piano in the old part of the house and I used to hear it play. And in my mind, in my young mind, I always thought that's funeral music, and I could never quite understand why I would have thought that. But now I know that funerals were held in parlors, and that that's possible. But this thing used to play the piano, but you could hear people walking around and doors opening and closing, and just like people really actually lived over there in that part of the house. So I did notice that there was always some kind of noise somewhere, something going on that wasn't real and you couldn't see it and you couldn't feel it, you couldn't touch it, but it was there. So,
I totally get that. And you did send me the photo of the home from the outside. So
mhm.
for the listeners, I will include that in the I'll add that to the blog so people can see the outside of the home to get an understanding of what it looked like, and I'll include it in the YouTube slide as well. Very interesting. Tell me about the
Yeah.
chairs moving. What happened with the chairs?
Oh, yeah, we had a spindleback black chair. It was a very old chair. My grandmother, whatever it was. It was kind of in the family chair. And so this is when we were all kind of living in the living room. We, was sleeping downstairs in the living room. There was no more going upstairs. And my brother, my youngest brother and I, we were sleeping on the floor closest to the door that goes out, and not the door that you can see, but the other door. And then there's a window over there. And we woke up really early and the sun was coming up and we were trying to be very quiet because everybody else was sleeping. And we noticed that black chair was not where it belongs. And so we thought, oh, maybe somebody just moved it. And so kind of talked and chatted and maybe drifted off or whatever, but then noticed again that, oh my goodness, that chair is closer. And then we started to get scared. And then, so well, I think we kind of took our mother's advice, and if we don't pay any attention to it, it'll go away. And the next thing I remember is that that chair was over top of my brother's head, just sitting, like somebody picked it up and put it over his head, sitting there. And well, there's two little kids that just came unglued, woke up the whole entire family. And it wasn't too long after that we moved out. Mom had enough, and we moved out.
What happened when you left, if anything?
Martha, yeah, Martha stayed. Nobody's ever dreamed about Martha again. We just remember her. Um, but like I said about it, it will visit us when we're, talking about it. He'll visit me when I'm sick and vulnerable. He just picks random times, and the dreams, they aren't necessarily about it, but I know that it's because of it. So I might have a terrible dream, like I'm being swept away in a terrible flood, and it's the scariest thing that ever happened to me. And I could always say, "Gee, I had that dream because my sister and I talked about it last week," or something like that. So I believe that it, is just he's still there.
And you had mentioned to me that the people or the residents after you guys never reported, or that, or somehow you were made aware that they never experienced anything. Is that accurate?
Yes, my sister and I, we when we left the house, we moved to New York State, and so my sister and I, we got, she got a driver's license, and we took a trip back down just to drive through the old neighborhood, and we drove up by the old house, and we saw that people lived in there. We knocked on the door, and we asked them if there was anything weird going on in the house, and if there was any hauntings and things moving around, and they looked at us like we were crazy. And they said, "No, it's a beautiful house. We love it here." So it was just us.
What do you think it was? Why do you think you guys were targeted like that?
Well, we all have our own psychic abilities. I'm a psychic medium, and and I have found myself walking in and out of time slips, which is a whole nother story. So I think that we were just very aware, that these things were there. And, spirits like chaos, because chaos is the energy that they need. And, there's four kids and we were all a year apart in age. And, so I think the energy in the house just allowed that thing to manifest itself. And I've thought about, well, perhaps it didn't like us because we were a bunch of active, energetic little kids, and it was a grouchy old man, and get thee out. So I really don't. I don't have a good answer. I just have guesses.
Sure. No, that's very interesting. Absolutely. Have you had any other type of activity at any level since those years?
Oh yeah. I have had a spirit in almost every house that I can remember that I've ever lived in. I have a spirit in this house here that I live in. Um, I had a little girl that followed me around through several different houses, but I haven't seen her in decades. Um, but spirits, well, I think spirits are all around us all the time, and you're either aware or you're not. And so there's something that lives in this house with me, and the cat sees it too. But every now and then I'll see it just kind of sweep through the room. It's just kind of a dark shadow. Whoop, there it goes. It's not malevolent, it's just here, you know. So I don't know. And it's interesting too is that my cat, he's not quite a year old, but he has appointed himself my caretaker, because when I have nightmares, the cat jumps up on the bed, he meows at me, he touches my face and wakes me up. And then I say, "Oh, Sir Talk a Lot. Oh, good kitty, good kitty." And then he'll lay down and he'll purr on me until I go back to sleep. So I have a caretaker. My cat.
Sir Talk a Lot. Yeah, he saves you.
Yeah.
He saves you from the nightmares. That's awesome. And that's interesting.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
last guest, my last episode, Bruce is a cat, and kind of the same thing. It had seen something at one point. He could tell the cat was looking at something. Something was there, and the cat was totally
Hmm.
honing in on it. So animals definitely have a really great sense for that stuff.
Oh yeah. Hmm.
So things kind of whiz by in this current home you're in now. So you know something's there. Has there been
Yeah.
anything near the level from back when you guys were younger in that other home? Have you ever any kind of poltergeist activity since then, or that just completely stopped?
I've seen poltergeist activity since, but nothing as malevolent as that thing. I lived in a condo, and it was a fairly new condo too. But the spirit of the lady that was lived there before I did, she didn't like all of my crystals and all my ghosty stuff, and she would knock it down. So it was interesting. So she was a poltergeist in that house, and I just knew she was there because she didn't like my stuff, and every now and then a stone would come off a cabinet where I had it set or something like that. Just, there's no way the stone could move by itself, but there it goes. So, and I had a Chiweenie at the time, and her name was Bibi, and she knew when this entity showed up because she would get up and her fur would hackle up and she would growl and she would look at nothing and stuff like that. So yeah, so that was the most poltergeist I'd had with that lady. I can't remember her name. I want to say Alice, but anyways, that's the most I had. But she wasn't out to hurt me. She was just mad because she was the first owner of that home, and I turned it into something she didn't want it to be. I guess you know.
What about your siblings? Have they experienced anything since this home back then?
Not as much as I have. Not as much as I have. I mean, the nightmares, yeah, but but then, I'm involved in the paranormal, and I do paranormal investigations, and I reach out to spirits, and and like I said, I've been in time slips, which is very, very interesting stuff. I can't make it happen; it just happens, and it's just really, really weird when it does. Um,
Can you describe that? That's very interesting.
Yeah, the last time slip I fell into, I was in Gettysburg. I live very close to Gettysburg, and there's Dobbins Tavern, and Dobbins was, one of the early settlers in Gettysburg. And interestingly enough, about Gettysburg is that my seventh great grandparents emigrated from Scotland, and they settled in Gettysburg, and they're buried in Gettysburg. And but anyways, and now here I am. But anyway, so I was in Gettysburg and I was going to meet some friends for lunch at Dobbins, and I was there early. So there's a long walkway because the building is a long building, and there's a gift shop. And the tavern, the restaurant, the tavern part wasn't open yet. But I was walking under the the overhang on the sidewalk there, and I was going to go into the gift shop. But all of a sudden, there's all these people bustling around, and but they're dressed in like 1850s clothes, but it was so real to me that they're bumping into me and I'm saying, oh, excuse me, pardon me, excuse me. And I'm like, where's all these people from? What's the deal here? And then I walked into the gift shop, and then poof, I was back into my own time, and I realized there's nobody out there, and I went, oh, holy cow. So that's what happens to me. I get into those little time periods. And I figured that particular day it was Sunday morning, and churches were often held in homes. And and it was mostly ladies dressed in their very finest. So there were some gentlemen there too. But I'm thinking that as I was walking, in that walkway, I was getting in the way of everybody bustling in to go to church. I was just in the way, you know. I wish I could make it happen, but I can't.
Yeah. How about another one that stands out to you? This is so interesting.
As a trucker in I did a lot of stuff in Georgia and South Georgia, and in the slave territories. And I was out walking around was at a truck stop, and I was out walking around, and it was close to this little tiny town that just looked like it was got frozen from the 1850s or whatever. And so I was real close to that town. So I was out walking around, and all of a sudden there were no longer cars and trucks and modern buildings and street lamps. There were mules pulling wagons and people walking, and this very sad, oppressive feeling. And like I was in slave territory. And what was really interesting about this little town is that there was still a slave jail, and the whipping post was still there. And when I would drive by this every week when on my route down there, and I would look at that and I'd say, "Oh gosh, that must have been so terrible." And then that one day it just happened. I was just there was mules and horses and carriages and people, and it just and then I went back to the truck stop, and I was back in 2015.
That's incredible. When you come out of that, so to speak, what is it like for you? What do you feel, or what are your thoughts on that moment that you
I
experienced?
Well, the first thing I feel is complete exhaustion. It takes everything out of me to go back 150 years or whatever and then come back. I'm wiped out. Um, Sometimes I shake, like the emotion, like right now, I've got the shakes, Um, uh, it's just so very strange. But the biggest feel is it's exhausting, and it's so clear because I don't. It's not like, gee, where was I or what happened? It's so clear, that I was there. I saw that. I could smell the horses. I could. I was there. You know, it's weird.
How long is it just seconds long?
Yeah, yeah, I think so. Like in Gettysburg, it was just long enough to walk that walk, which is, maybe 10 seconds, but, but while I'm there in that other time period, it feels like, longer than 10 seconds. It's almost like I sort of kind of belong there, but I don't, it's like a parallel universe. I really don't know how to
Mm-hmm.
describe it. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know.
That's absolutely fascinating. You're able to tap into, it's almost like some glitch or something. I don't know, but you're able to do that and experience that, and that's just amazing. Investigations you do, man. Well, maybe we'll have to have you back and have you talk about those if you're interested in that. What you've experienced on that side.
I could send you a picture. I just investigated an old mill, and I felt like there was something behind me, and I had a name, and I was accurate on the name, and but anyways, I just felt like, gee, this thing is right behind me, and it's just it felt cold, and it just was really close behind me, and so one of the other team members took a picture, and you could actually see it. You could see its arm coming around me, and it's really weird. And then this big blue aura kind of light is there also. It's really, really an interesting picture. I'll send it to you. Yeah, so yeah, interesting things happen to me. I don't know why. I don't know where I got this ability, but just um, I walk in. I start my investigation with a pad and a paper, and I just tell everybody, just go, get away from me. I don't want to pick up any energy from you. I just want to be alone in the room, and then I just start writing, and that's how I get information.
And how long have you been doing that?
About 7, 8 years. My son died, and I think that's what got me interested because I wanted to know more. I didn't want to do it before then because I was still scared because of it. But my son died, and I knew some paranormal investigators, and I thought, I want to know what's on the other side. I do want to know. And so, in the safety of, my friends, I thought I would reach out and do that. And then I discovered that, holy cow, I'm a psychic medium. And it isn't from me saying that I'm a psychic medium, it's from other people saying, wow, you're a psychic medium. Look at you got all this information and it's accurate. How did you do that? I don't know. It just came to me. So
Wow, I'm very sorry about the loss of your son.
yeah, that was rough.
But yeah, I would love to get you back to hear your ventures from your investigations. So maybe we'll set that up. But
Sure.
I appreciate you coming on to talk about this, what you experienced with your family in that home all those years ago. That's incredible. I hope tonight you don't have any. I hope it does not, or I hope Sir, what is it? Talks a lot, gets you out of
Sir
it.
talk a
Yes, Sir
lot.
Talk a lot
Yeah.
gets you out of it. If there's something does happen and you're having a
Mhm.
nightmare, but yeah, thank you again for coming on, Bonnie. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Gino.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Bye bye now.
Thank you for listening. I appreciate you being here. If you have an account to share and would like to be on the show, email me at show@accountsoftheparanormal.com and tell me what you saw. You can catch this show wherever you listen to podcasts, as well as our website, accountsoftheparanormal.com, where you can access full episodes and links to all our socials and our YouTube channel, where you can listen and watch along with visual images. And if you're a fan of what you heard here, please like, share, follow, subscribe. I appreciate the support. I'll see you next time.